Morning all. Let's have a look at another interesting encounter between Levon Aronian and Magnus Carlsen from the Bilbao Grand Slam chess final in 2008. Levon, playing white, kicked off with c4, the English opening, and we saw a symmetrical response with c5 from Magnus. Now knight f3, knight f6. Now opening up in the centre with d4 immediately. After c takes, knight takes, Magnus plays e6. So with e6 you'd expect potentially that black will play d6 later and have a kind of hedgehog setup. Watch out for that d6 square. g3, and now we see bishop b4 check. After knight d2, white is avoiding potentially his pawns being doubled, and he's avoiding bishop d2, which might disrupt his control of d4, and is what black wants with this check, this annoying check. The bishop can be dragged back. So knight d2 looks like a good idea. Knight c6, challenging the d4 knight. The knight retreats and attacks the bishop. Black doesn't want to give up the bishop pair. He plays bishop e7. We see bishop g2, and now both sides castle. Okay, now in this position, Magnus again, he doesn't play d6 here. He's got an opportunity right now to play a standard hedgehog. So the interesting thing about this game is, instead of playing that, or d5 maybe, he plays actually rook b8, just going for the queenside counterplay on the c pawn with b5. So we see actually knight e4, and now this interesting decision to play b5 here, not minding a seemingly powerful positional move from white. After c takes, rook takes, namely knight d6, which seems quite annoying on the surface, attacking the rook, and if the knight is left there, that could be quite painful. It's actually taken, so Magnus is giving up the dark square bishop. Okay, and now he plays bishop b7. So can white make use of this theoretical trump card, this dark square bishop? Knight a3, attacking the rook slips back to b6. Now bishop e3, offering a pawn sacrifice, so the position is sharpening up. Does Magnus dare take that pawn? Well, there's not too much else. He does take the pawn, and we see one of the points revealed, bishop c5, threatening to win the exchange with queen takes f8. This rook is moved, and now rook ab1, and we see another point now emerging from white's pawn sacrifice. Black is under a lot of pressure for the pawn. He does take on b1, rook takes b1, and the bishop now actually goes to a6, more active perhaps than just dropping back to a8. So on a6 it's a bit of a nuisance. It's blocked on that diagonal with knight b5, and now Magnus voluntarily gives up the light square bishop. So I don't know if you think this is quite outrageous, but basically Magnus has given up now both bishops. So it's a 2 knight versus 2 bishop scenario. Does Levon have the advantage? Levon is a pawn down here, but should that count for much? We see the move queen c8. White was potentially threatening just to win a pawn there with bishop c6, but the queen has got another intention, maybe to come to a6. After a4, we see actually in this position h6, making some air for the king, for the back row not to be so weak potentially. Bishop a3, and in this position we see queen a6, targeting white's a4 pawn. Levon is not too keen in this position in simply protecting that. He goes basically for black's king a little bit to cause some structural damage around black's king with the move bishop b2, threatening to damage black's pawn structure. Magnus basically allows this. He plays queen takes a4, snatching another pawn. So currently black is 2 pawns up, but okay, what is happening here? White can regain a pawn at least with bishop takes c6, which he plays d takes, and he can prepare bishop f6 to be potentially more effective. He tries to do so with rook b4, The queen at the moment has got no checking squares. D1 is covered, A1 is covered. It goes to A5, lurking around. If this rook ever moves, then there's a queen E1 check, which would be handy. White now damages the pawn structure around black's king, plays the seemingly dangerous rook G4 check. So, is this position becoming quite critical for black? King H7, and now white regains one of his pawns. So, he's only a pawn down, and these pawns are doubled, and the king safety looks a bit loose. The king safety looks a bit weak, potentially, with the double pawns intuitively, but actually black has this resource now available. But first, Magnus plays rook D8, introducing rook D1 as well as queen E1 as potential threats. We see queen C2 check, F5, now rook A4, the queen comes in, check, and now we see a kind of counter-attack evolving here, rook D1. So who is attacking who now? Queen C7, attacking F7. The king, curiously, goes to G6, away from any dark square checks. If it went to G7, maybe the dark square checks are dangerous. But there's also the idea that, hang on, rook A7, F7, isn't this dangerous? But white is also threatened in this position with many checks, which we should explore later, which ones are the most effective. Okay, king F3 is played. The king is making a run for it a little bit. Check, king E3, and now we see rook A1, trying to swap off rooks, or inviting swapping of rooks. Queen C2, and in this position it seems the worst is over for black a little bit. With the rook off, his king is not going to get mated, it seems, that easily. He does take white's rook. After takes, we see check, and another check, and Magnus has emerged basically with an outside pass pawn, the A pawn. After all that, after the smoke has cleared, he's got the endgame advantage. G4 from Levon. Okay, is this attack really that strong now? Queen E5, still maintaining the A5 pawn, and a nice centre point for the queen. G takes, and a king comes in with king takes. Queen E8, king steps back to defend F7. Queen F8, and the pawn starts moving forward. A4. Levon seems to be on the back foot now. After E3 check, king G3, queen D3, supporting the idea soon perhaps of A3. We see now H4. Levon is not too keen to use this check just yet. A3, and now king H2. The weakness of that last move is that the F pawn is now unpraised. Potentially queen F5, attacking that F pawn and offering A3 in return. Okay, but there's also an idea of maybe a check here as well. Queen takes A3, and now we see queen takes F2 check. After king H3 check, and now the black king helps the queen with king H5. Queen F8 check. After king H1, Magnus plays king G4, and here white resigns. Levon resigns. It's a very interesting game because Magnus didn't go into the usual hedgehog formation. He gave up both bishops during this game and snatched a pawn and took risks around his king, at least on the surface, and he emerged triumphantly in the endgame with an outside pass pawn. Let's have a look at forensic investigation now, stage 2, with an engine here. But actually, no, let's just check out that endgame position as well before we rewind. So in this position, let's say, taking here, it's a mate in 3. king h3. There's no more checks against the king. So that's fair enough. So queen g7 check. What about that? King h3 again. No more checks. So what does white do here? In fact, king h3 is the threat. The king is joining the queen. So at least e4 prepares queen a3 check. I think that's the idea. But this ending is hopeless, I think, for white. It looks fairly hopeless. So okay, let's go back. We can assume this looks entirely lost now because of king h3 is the principal threat here. So if we go back, technically, didn't white have the advantage at some point, or throughout most of the opening at least? Here in bishop e7, it seems curiously the engine lights black from a technical evaluation perspective. Now rook b8 is curious. d5 is an idea here from an engine point of view, but rook b8, this is curious stuff now with b5 here. So we see c takes, rook takes, knight d6, and black giving up the dark square bishop, which I guess might be controversial if bishops, it depends how bishops are valued by basically the engine software, but I expect maybe after bishop d6 white to flip to have a small advantage here. Yes, you can see engine likes bishop here for white a little bit now. So knight a3, okay. Now this looks like a powerful move, bishop e3. It is mentioned here to just sack that b2 pawn for bishop c5 to force rook e8. Okay, so rook ab1, and we see, okay, was there a slip up here? Knight c4 as an alternative, offering another pawn. Seems quite daring. Queen d3, but where is this rook going? It's trapped here on this one. Bishop a6. It takes, I think white will end up with a small advantage here. Use the exchange up for 2 pawns, but small advantage for white. But that's an interesting continuation. Knight c4, and if the rook stumbled back, or where can the rook go? If rook b5, a4, advantage to white. So this might be an interesting move, just to win the exchange. Levon just swapped off the rooks calmly, just maybe relying on more longer term pressure here in the position. Now after knight b5 we see black giving up the other bishop, but it's about equal here, engine point of view. So the 2 bishops versus the 2 knights. And here it seems as though black is okay to do this. Cheeky stuff to win this a pawn here. Did Levon have to sack the a pawn? That's another question. If he goes back passively, say queen d1, d5, that's a problem. The queen is sitting on that d pawn. If the queen goes back, then d5 restricts the bishop, marks out some central squares. Okay, so we see bishop b2, more aggressive attempt. So bishop takes c6, and now rook b4. Looks dangerous for black. Queen a5. A persistence to try and get near white's king as well. Bishop takes. We saw check. And black is fractionally better from an engine point of view. Queen takes c6. Rook d8. Okay, the rook was attacked. Queen c2 check, and now the advantage is going for black here after queen c2. Was there something better here? Rook a4. The queen e1 check here, you might ask. Queen b7. Rook takes. And this might be about equal. This might be better than the game continuation, because these are just double pawns. There's no outside pawn here to play with as a decoy. Okay, so basically after rook d8 we saw check, and it seems here that black is getting a definite half a pawn advantage, or even more now after this invasion here. Queen c7, okay. King g6, most accurate move. If king g7, check. If here now g4, okay. This looks quite dangerous for the king here, but still better technically for black. Okay, so anyway, king g6, most accurate move. Avoid any harassment immediately with the queen e5 check. Now here, it seems Magnus has missed rook d2. This has been cried out for, rook d2. So what's the point of this? Let's say queen here, check. Now queen d1. What is the point of that? This is mysterious stuff. Rook a2. Oh, rook d5. Again, it's, what is the engine thinking here? Basically, maybe it's just, maybe there isn't anything that specific. It's just better for black. Okay, so Magnus plays check. He's still got the advantage. This is the human way to play. Just simplify. Pawn up, outside pass pawn. If white dared to take the a7 pawn, is that a silly question? Guess it is. It's a mate in 8. Check. Check. It actually wins the rook anyway, even if it's not mate. So that pawn cannot be taken. So we get simplification now. With rook takes a4. Queen check. So black is driving that pawn up, the outside pass pawn basically. And now, okay, it's getting tricky after a4. In fact, we see a big evaluation shift after a4 in black's favour. What can Levon do here? If he tries queen g8 in this position, there is queen g7. I don't think, well, you can't leave f7, so queen g7. Queen goes back. Now check, discover check here. Check. Let's go here, check. And now a3, this pawn's getting dangerous, this outside pass pawn. So let's go back. So this is now really in Magnus's favour, this outside pass pawn, which we often see as a kind of trademark in many of Magnus's endgames, that he's winning with an outside pass pawn. It's a basically simple endgame concept, asset to have. But here, okay, he's given it up now for going for the king. So he swapped it, and his king's coming in very dangerously. So here, yep, white resigned. A very tense struggle between, in 2012, October now, these are the number 1 and 2 ranked players in the world on the FIDE rating list. And this was their struggle in 2008 when they were both still very high rated. Levon 2737, Magnus 2775. So, a fascinating struggle. Magnus showing he's able to just give up the bishop pair and stash a pawn and survive an attack and win an ending with an outside pass pawn against Levon Aronian. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.